Russia just woke up to a nightmare it cannot stop. And the worst part for the Kremlin is that the weapons doing the damage cost less than a single tank track. In the span of one night, May the 8th, 2026, Ukrainian drones reached 1,500 kilometers into Russia's industrial heartland, hammered an elite Russian division in Chechnya, and for the first time in the entire war, shot Russian mothership drones out of the sky using artificial intelligence interceptors. No F-35s, no B-2 bombers, no carrier strike group sitting offshore. Just a swarm of small, cheap, smart machines that walked through every layer of Russian air defense as if it weren't even there. And what we are about to show you is not a one-off raid. This is the moment the cost equation of modern war finally collapsed on Vladimir Putin's head. Now here is the picture, as the smoke is still rising. According to the Kyiv Independent and Reuters reporting from May the 8th, the security service of Ukraine, known as the SBU, struck the Lukoil-Permnefteorgsintez oil refinery in the city of Perm for the third time in just 9 days. The plant sits more than 1,500 kilometers, or roughly 930 miles from the Ukrainian border. To put that in perspective, that is farther than the distance from London to Warsaw, and Ukraine's drones flew it with no fighter cover, no AWACS, no tankers, and no F-35s clearing the path. The SBU's Alpha Special Operations Center hit the refinery's atmospheric vacuum distillation unit, the heart of crude oil processing, and ignited a fire visible from kilometers away. They also hit the Perm linear pipeline dispatch station, owned by Russian state oil giant Transneft, which feeds crude in 4 different directions across Russia's main pipeline network. According to industry data cited by Bloomberg, the Perm refinery alone processes more than 13 million tons of oil every year, about 260,000 barrels a day. That is not a side facility. That is one of Russia's top 10 fuel producers, and it is on fire. But Perm was only one piece of the puzzle. Overnight on the same date, Ukrainian drones also struck the Slavneft-Yanos refinery in Yaroslavl, a plant co-owned by Rosneft and Gazprom Neft, sitting just 282 kilometers northeast of Moscow, with a refining capacity of 300,000 barrels per day. Local residents posted videos online showing a massive fire and a column of black smoke towering over the city skyline. Then drones reached Rostov-on-Don, where they hit an industrial zone that included the Empils paint coatings plant, which had already been targeted in January 2026, meaning Russian authorities had 4 full months to harden the site, and Ukraine still walked through their defenses again. They also hit the Radar Scientific and Technical Center, a defense industry firm tied directly to Russian air defense electronics manufacturing. There is a brutal irony there. Ukraine is now using drones to strike the very factories that build the radar parts Russia needs to detect Ukrainian drones. And it gets worse. According to the Ukrainian Air Force and Russian regional governors quoted by the Kyiv Independent and UA Wire on May the 8th, the strikes forced the closure of 13 airports across southern Russia, including Astrakhan, Vladikavkaz, Volgograd, Gelendzhik, Grozny, Krasnodar, Makhachkala, Magas Mineralnie Vody, Nalchik, Sochi, Stavropol, and Elista. Russian air traffic control across an entire region, an area larger than Germany, had to be reorganized in real time. Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency was forced to issue emergency rerouting orders, and commercial airlines began canceling and diverting flights deep into the night. And here is where things get even more humiliating for Moscow. While Russia's economy was burning in the west, and the Urals, Ukrainian drones were flying directly into Vladimir Putin's most loyal regional fortress, Chechnya. According to OSINT analysis, published by the Russian outlet Astra and confirmed by Euromaidan Press on May the 8th, at least 2 large fixed-wing Ukrainian drones struck Grozny, the capital of the Chechen Republic. The first hit the Khankala district on the city's outskirts. Khankala is not just any base. It hosts the headquarters of the 42nd Guards, Yevpatoria Red Banner Motor Rifle Division military unit, 27,777 part of the 58th Combined Arms Army of Russia's Southern Military District. This is one of Russia's largest standing military bases, and it has been a key node funneling Chechen Akhmat fighters and Kadyrovite mercenaries into the war against Ukraine. The second drone came down near Grozny's central railway station, and according to Astra, the Chechen branch of the Federal Security Service, the FSB sits exactly 120 meters from the impact zone. Ramzan Kadyrov's own residence is less than 2 kilometers away, and the Grozny city complex, the regional showpiece of his rule, is 1.5 kilometers from the strike. Now, this is not the first time Ukrainian drones have crossed the Caucasus to deliver a message. According to the New Voice of Ukraine on December the 5th, 2025, Ukrainian UAVs already hit a high-rise building inside the Grozny city complex, the very tower that houses Chechnya's Security Council, the body that recruits mercenary fighters for deployment to Ukraine. So this latest strike is part of a pattern, and Kadyrov knows it. Sergei Sternenko, an advisor to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, summed it up bluntly on Telegram, declaring, "Greetings to Kadyrov are being delivered by Ukrainian drones currently attacking the capital of Ichkeria, Grozny." Notice the wording Ichkeria. That is the name Chechen separatists used for their unrecognized state in the 1990s wars. Ukraine is not just hitting Russian targets. It is signaling to every disaffected republic inside the Russian Federation that the Kremlin's grip is no longer total. And this is only the beginning of what should terrify the Kremlin. So how did Ukraine pull off 4 simultaneous strike axes, tactical deep strike air defense, and economic, in a single 24-hour window? The answer is the most important shift in this war since the introduction of HIMARS in 2022. And it has nothing to do with expensive Western platforms. Now let's break it down scenario by scenario. The first scenario is the AI Hornet, the small smart killer that has Russian logistics officers refusing to drive in daylight. According to reporting from the German outlet Bild and Ukrainian defense site, Militarny, the National Guard of Ukraine's 1st Azov Corps, released footage on May the 8th showing systematic strikes on Russian fuel trucks, ammunition carriers, and supply convoys around occupied Mariupol. The unit's official statement carried a deeper meaning that should not be missed. Azov declared in a Facebook post, quoted by the Kyiv Independent, the Azov Corps is already patrolling its hometown of Mariupol for now from the air. But there's more to come. For Azov, this is personal. Mariupol fell to Russian forces in May 2022 after the brutal siege of the Azovstal steel plant, and many of the original Azov defenders are still in Russian captivity. So the message Ukrainian drone operators are sending right now is not just military. It is a vow. The unit said its operators are now patrolling roads up to 160 kilometers, or roughly 100 miles behind the line of contact. The drone in question is the Hornet, a fixed-wing AI-enabled kamikaze UAV, built not by a giant European defense house but by Swiftbeat LLCAUS company, founded by former Google CEO Eric Schmidt. According to Militarny and German journalist Julian Rupke, the Hornet uses Starlink satellite terminals for command and control, has an estimated range of 100 to 150 kilometers, and carries a warhead of around 5 kilograms, roughly 11 pounds of explosive, packed into a shape no bigger than a model airplane. The key word here is AI. The Hornet does not need a continuous human-in-the-loop link to identify and finish a target. It locks on, recognizes, and dives even if Russian electronic warfare cuts the radio link in the final seconds. According to the 1st Azov Corps, Russian air defenses have so far struggled to intercept the Hornets, despite operators maintaining visual contact during attacks. That is the polite way of saying Russian counter-drone systems are failing. Now do the math on cost. A Russian Tiger armored utility truck, the kind seen burning in the Azov footage, costs Moscow around $100,000. A Kamaz fuel tanker is in the same range. The Hornet that destroyed it likely costs a small fraction of that, on par with a high-end consumer car. And Ukraine is hunting these convoys not occasionally, but systematically day after day, 160 kilometers behind the line. There is no Russian logistics officer in southern Ukraine who can plan a daylight resupply run today and feel confident his trucks will arrive. And U.S. Army soldiers were already training on these systems in Germany back in March, according to Militarny photographs, meaning the Pentagon has watched Ukraine debug this technology in combat and is preparing to integrate it into its own doctrine. That detail alone should tell you where this technology is going next. Now that's not even the worst part for the Russians. The second scenario is the converted civilian aircraft, the so-called farm planes that fly 1,500 kilometers and ignore Russia's air defense entirely. The drones that hit Grozny on May the 8th were not Shahed-style propeller pods. According to OSINT footage published by the Telegram channel Exilanova Plus and analyzed by Astra, they were light aircraft converted into kamikaze platforms, bigger payloads, longer range, and crucially flight signatures that look more like ordinary general aviation traffic than military UAVs. That is why they reached the 42nd Division headquarters and the FSB neighborhood with such precision. Russian S-300, S-400, and Panzer systems were optimized to shoot down small, fast, low radar cross-section weapons like cruise missiles and Shaheds. They are not optimized to track a 4-seat propeller airplane bumbling along at 300 kilometers per hour at low altitude. And here's where the math turns brutal. According to Volodymyr Zelensky's public statement on May the 8th, Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil infrastructure have already inflicted $7 billion in damage in 2026 alone. $7 billion in 5 months using converted Cessnas and small kamikaze drones, with parts you could buy for a few $1,000s each. The cost ratio is not just bad for Russia. It is civilization-ending bad. But before we get to the third scenario, this is a quick reminder that you are watching Military Outlook. We bring you the full picture, not just the headlines. So hit subscribe to ensure you stay ahead of the curve, because what's coming in the next part of this video is the moment that may decide the entire shape of drone warfare for the next decade. Now, the third scenario, and perhaps the most alarming for Moscow, is what happened in the skies over Ukraine itself. According to Militarny's reporting on May the 8th, the Ukrainian defense technology firm Skyfall publicly released combat footage showing its P-1-SUN interceptor drone shooting down 5 Russian Gerbera drones in a single day. And here is what makes this not just newsworthy, but historic. The Gerberas in question were no longer just cheap decoys designed to overload Ukrainian air defense. They were carriers, what some Ukrainian analysts have started calling airborne motherships, physically transporting Russian FPV attack drones deep into Ukrainian rear areas before releasing them near the target. This solves Russia's biggest FPV problem, which is battery range. A normal FPV drone has maybe 20 to 30 minutes of flight time and an effective combat radius measured in single-digit kilometers. By piggybacking it on a Gerbera with a much larger fuel tank and extended-range airframe, Russia was reaching targets it could never have struck with FPVs alone. According to Ukrainian Defense Ministry advisor Serhiy Bezkresnov, call sign Flash, this Gerbera FPV hybrid first appeared in early 2026. It was a clever, low-cost answer to Ukraine's electronic warfare advantage. Released the FPV, close to the target where the radio control window is short and Ukrainian jamming can't reach it in time. And the Ukrainian response, the P-1-SUN, is exactly the kind of asymmetric counter the Russian system was not built to defeat. According to Skyfall's specifications, the P-1-SUN reaches speeds of up to 310 kilometers per hour, operates at altitudes up to 9,000 meters, almost 30,000 feet, the cruising altitude of a commercial jetliner, and engages targets at ranges up to 33 kilometers. Some variants carry thermal imaging cameras and automated target lock systems, which means they can hunt at night in fog in conditions that would blind a human pilot. Translation: Ukraine now has an autonomous robot fighter designed to hunt Russian autonomous robot bombers. We are watching in real time the birth of fully automated air-to-air combat between drones, something Western air defense doctrine considered a problem for the 2030s or 2040s. Ukraine just brought it forward by a decade, and this is where Russia's nightmare truly begins. The fourth scenario ties them all together, and it is the scenario the Kremlin was praying nobody would notice. Russia announced a unilateral ceasefire from May the 8th through May the 10th, ostensibly to protect its Victory Day parade on the 9th. For Putin, the May 9th parade is not just a holiday. It is the cornerstone of his entire regime narrative, the heir to the Soviet defeat of Nazi Germany, projecting power, military pride, and untouchability to a domestic audience. Foreign leaders had been invited to Red Square. Television cameras were set up. The script was written. And then Ukraine rewrote it. According to UA Wire and President Zelensky's own statement on May the 8th, Russia immediately violated that ceasefire by launching more than 140 drone and artillery strikes against Ukrainian positions in the same overnight window. So Ukraine responded in kind, but with surgical precision, hitting the symbols Putin needed most for his Victory Day propaganda show. A burning refinery deep in the Urals on the eve of the parade, a military district headquarters in Grozny, the FSB neighborhood, 13 southern airports shut down across the entire North Caucasus, and the message was unmistakable. There is no rear area in Russia anymore. There is no parade ground that cannot be reached. There is no oil installation, no division headquarters, no security service building, no warlord's neighborhood that is safe. As of May the 8th, every map Putin pinned to his Kremlin wall labeled Deep Rear is a lie. And Russian state television on the morning of the 9th had to choose between covering the parade and covering the fires, knowing that whichever they chose, the world would see both. What this means for Moscow is catastrophic. According to estimates cited by Bloomberg and Reuters from the analytics firm OilX, Russian refinery throughput in April 2026 fell to its lowest level since December 2009, a 16-year low driven directly by Ukraine's deep strike campaign. Just last week, Russia's second-largest refinery in Kirishi in the Leningrad region was forced to halt operations after Ukrainian drone strikes knocked 3 of its 4 primary processing units offline, according to Reuters. Russia's military procurement system runs on diesel. Diesel runs from refineries through pipelines like the Perm linear station. Knock those out, and tanks stop moving, fuel trucks run dry, and frontline units start improvising. Domestic Russian fuel prices have already begun spiking, and gas stations in several regions are reporting shortages, the kind of cascading economic effect that strategic bombing campaigns took weeks of B-17 raids to achieve in World War II. Ukraine is doing it overnight, with hardware that fits in the back of a pickup truck. At the same time, the Hornet swarm is making it impossible to safely rotate troops or supply convoys anywhere within 160 kilometers of the line of contact in occupied Ukraine. And the appearance of the P-1-SUN means even Russia's clever new mothership drones can no longer guarantee penetration. Putin's air defense generals are not just losing, They are being publicly humiliated by hardware that looks like hobby aircraft. Ramzan Kadyrov, who has spent years marketing himself as the indestructible warlord of the South, just had drones fly within 120 meters of his FSB headquarters and 1.5 kilometers from his front door. Kadyrov's silence in the hours after the strike said more than any statement could. Inside the Russian military forums and Z-blogger Telegram channels, the mood has shifted from bravado to barely contained panic. There are open complaints about wasted air defense missiles, missing radars, and the vanishing illusion of a safe rear. The window for Russia to respond is closing fast, and the more it tries to lash out, the more Ukraine's autonomous swarm punishes it. So the real question now is this: what happens when Ukraine scales this from hundreds of AI drones a month to tens of thousands? Because according to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, the country aims to produce more than 7 million drones in 2026 alone, up from 4 million in 2025. 7 million drones. Even if only 1 in 1,000 reaches a strategic target that is 7,000 successful deep strikes a year. That math doesn't get better for Moscow. It gets worse every single day. And that is the reality the Kremlin is waking up to tonight. The age of expensive vertical stack militaries that thought $500 million fighters and billion-dollar air defense networks could buy invincibility is over. The future belongs to whoever can mass-produce smart, cheap, autonomous machines fastest. And right now, that is Ukraine. If you want to stay on top of where this war goes next, subscribe to Military Outlook and turn on notifications. This is Military Outlook, and we'll see you on the next one.